Good news, you can now buy the Honor Magic V2 in Europe and the UK. And if you have no idea what this phone is all about, you need to watch this video. Okay, so the Honor Magic V2, which is this phone I'm shooting on right now, was first released in China last year, and then it was previewed for release in the UK and Europe at the IFA trade show in Berlin in September last year. And the good news is that you can buy it today. You can actually pre-order it and have one very soon if you live in the UK or Europe. I have to separate both. That's another story. And if there's one smartphone category that dominates all others on my channel when it comes to people fighting in the comments, it's foldables. But no matter what you think about foldable smartphones, when I tell you that the Magic V2 is the thinnest on the market, you're interested, aren't you? Okay, let's talk about the specs and the pricing of the Magic V2. So it comes in two colours, either black, like my review unit, or purple, and it weighs just 231 grams. And closed like this, it's 9.9 millimeters thick, or should we say thin. It's powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, it's got 16 gig of RAM, it's got 512 gig of storage, and it runs Magic OS 7.2, which is based on Android 13. There's a 5000 mAh battery powering everything, and that's capable of 66 watt supercharging, but not wireless charging. And I should also note that it doesn't have an official IP water resistance rating. The external display is 6.43 inches with 2500 nits of peak brightness, and the internal display is 7.92 inches with 1600 nits of peak brightness, and both have a variable 120 Hz refresh rate. I'll come onto the camera system in a second, but the price of this thing in the UK is £1,699.99. So foldable smartphones are still very expensive, and the Magic V2 does nothing to dispel that. However, if you're quick, there are some very nice early order bargains, including a completely free pair of Bang & Olufsen headphones. But let's get onto that camera system. Before we get into the camera system on the Magic V2, just a very quick word from today's sponsor, which has made a massive difference filming this video. It's the Hover Air and their brilliant X1 drone, which is designed to offer an easy and fun photography experience without the need for a controller or an app. And trust me, as someone who flies drones fairly regularly and has to use controllers and apps, this makes a massive difference. The Hover Air X1 could not be easier to use. You just turn it on, choose from one of the 5 preset flight paths, and then just press a button and let it take off from your hand. And the enclosure design means it's super safe too, so there's no worries about hurting yourself. From there, the drone operates automatically depending on the mode you've chosen, which includes hover, zoom out, follow, orbit, and bird's eye. And all of those flight paths have a bunch of settings in the app, which includes distance, duration, and flight angle. There's even a custom dolly mode, so if you don't want to pay someone to walk backwards and film you while you're talking to camera, you don't have to. This worked really, really well. The great thing about the X1 is that it's designed to be immediately usable whenever inspiration strikes, and it achieves that brilliantly. It shoots the footage automatically, you don't have to press start or stop, and once you're finished, you go into the app, download the footage onto your phone, but everything else can be done on the drone without ever touching your phone. For instance, you can press the buttons to cycle through the different flight paths and long press to access the settings for each one. It even records sound with built-in noise reduction. The replaceable battery supports up to 20 flight paths or 11 minutes of flight time, but the real selling point of the X1 is that it starts and stops filming at just the right time, so there's no extra fat that you get from other drones. You don't have to edit this stuff at all. It's just the perfect shot every single time. And it's so small as well. It only weighs 125 grams, which means it fits in small bags and some pockets. To find out more about the Hover Air X1, just click that link below. The Magic V2 features a triple camera system on the rear, so it has a 50 megapixel wide, a 50 megapixel ultra wide, and a 20 megapixel telephoto. It's got 2 front-facing cameras, one here and one on the inside. They are both 16 megapixels. Now, as always, I'll let you be the judge in the comment section of the quality of the Magic V2 photos, but I'm a big fan. They're not oversaturated, yet they do still pop nicely. They come off the screen as you'd like them to, and they're nicely moody as well. I do like moody photos from smartphones, and these ones from the Magic V2 really do have some character. The only thing I'm not a fan of is the default focal length choices, so we have 1x, 2.5x and 10x. The 2.5x is taken care of with the telephoto lens, whereas the 10x is a digital zoom, which can be a bit hit and miss at times. I'm really getting used to 5x on flagship smartphones these days, on the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the S24 Ultra, and I'd love to see that on the next Honor foldable. But that is a relatively small gripe. The images the phone produces are really, really good, and I think look every bit the flagship snapper. The wide aperture on all three lenses captures plenty of light, and the Magic V2 never struggled with fast-moving subjects, and it is incredibly sharp, as you can see on this photo of my dog Eddie. At times, the photos shot by this phone are very pixel-like, which really gets my vote. As you'd guess, there's some interesting AI stuff built into this camera system as well, including auto capture, which automatically snaps away when it detects running, smiling and jumping on behalf of both humans and animals. Now, I tested this while smiling stupidly, and well, it works, but I'm not a big fan of automated camera features. I'm a bit old-fashioned like that. Oh, and there is a full Pro mode that gives you access to all of the camera features if you want to turn this phone into a DSLR. And it does make fantastic use of this foldable design. So for instance, I can turn on the front screen, so if I'm taking a photo of you can see what I'm taking a photo of. And because it's foldable, you can easily prop it up to take photos hands-free, particularly if you want to try out that auto detection smiley thing. It shoots up to 4K 60 video, which I think looks really good, but it's worth highlighting the movie mode, which enables you to drop the shooting down to 24 frames per second and gain access to log shooting. I didn't get much time to test that, but the fact it has that option and the fact that the camera system on this is so feature-rich goes some way to justifying that price, and it does make the claim of this being a flagship phone completely justified. Foldable smartphones are Marmite. There's no getting away from it. You either love them or you hate them. Whenever I do a review of the Samsung Z Fold series or the Pixel Fold, comments are just flooded with people either saying it's the best thing ever or they are just way too expensive. Apart from the price, there are three things that bother people: the crease, the front display, and the size and weight. And the Magic V2 does an incredible job of answering pretty much all three of those questions. Firstly, the crease. It's there. Whenever you buy a foldable phone, it's going to have a crease down the middle of the internal display because it does that. The good news with the Magic V2 is that you can barely see it unless you really look for it, and as I always say, if you really look for stuff, you're gonna find it. Just use the thing and you barely notice it's there. Secondly, the front display is damn near perfect. There are two common problems with foldable smartphone displays, the front display. The first one is, well, it's perfectly illustrated by the Samsung Z Fold 4 and 5. This is the 5 and it's just way too narrow. Typing on that, no matter what Samsung fans say, is an absolute nightmare. The second problem is a weird problem, I completely admit, because I love this phone, but the Pixel Fold, it's a beautiful front display. It's nice and wide, nice and usable, doesn't have those typing issues, but it's so good you barely open this thing up. The Magic V2 sits squarely in the middle, so it's wide enough to type and do pretty much everything on here, but it leaves just enough curiosity for you to think, let's do this on the big screen. But let's talk about the crowning glory of the Magic V2, the size and the weight, which is just utterly unbelievable. It's very hard to illustrate this unless you hold one of these in your hands, but if I put it up against the Samsung Z Fold, we do say Z in this country, sorry, but against the Z Fold 5, it is comically thinner. And the Pixel Fold as well, it looks so much bigger, so much thicker than the Magic V2. Now there are some compromises because of this thin frame. I think they're because of this. It's a bit of a guess, but we can make an educated guess with this. As mentioned earlier, there's no official IP rating, which is a shame because it gives you a bit less confidence if it starts raining. And it has no wireless charging, and I know this bothers a lot of people. It's never really bothered me. I don't tend to charge my phones wirelessly. I always plug them in, but I get why that could annoy you. However, tech is all about compromises, and if you want a smartphone, a foldable smartphone that is this thin, you're going to get a few. The good news is nothing else seems to be compromised, so the aforementioned camera system is fantastic, but the displays as well are typically Honor brilliant. They're large, they're bright, neither of them have big bezels, including that internal display. That is a big complaint that people have for the Pixel Fold, which has these great big bezels here. This doesn't, as you can see, if I open it up here, they are absolutely tiny. I should also mention that the Magic V2 features Honor's PWM dimming, circadian night display, and dynamic dimming technology, which are all designed to ease the strain on your eyes. But one of the most satisfying things about the Magic V2 is the way it snaps open, and when it snaps open, it's completely flat. There's no slight V shape, which is what you get on, and this does bother people about other foldable smartphones, is that if you open the Pixel Fold, it's still slightly bent there. Same thing goes, less pronounced, but the same thing goes roughly with the Z Fold 5. They don't completely open flat. This does. And it doesn't feel flimsy either. It's got this very lightweight titanium hinge, which, as I say, feels very confident. This is a review unit as well, so I'm not the only person to use this. There's no noise. There's nothing when you open it or close it. This is super impressive stuff. If you know me by now, you know that I don't do benchmarks or any kind of deep phone testing because I can't be bothered. But what I can tell you is that thanks to the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 in this phone, it zips along like a flagship phone should. I've talked a lot in the past about Magic OS, but that plays a big role in this. It's one of the most considerate and light-footed adaptations of Android 13 I've ever seen. Multitasking works really well on the Magic V2 as well, with window management being easy to get your head around and no lag when you're shifting things around. So if you want to create a split-screen view of two apps like this, it's very easy to do so. I love the fact you can drag down from the top of the display on a full screen app and then have Magic OS reveal which apps are compatible with the split view. It is super intuitive. I need to mention the parallel space feature as well, which is this kind of secluded area of Magic OS where you can store data, apps and photos away from the main operating system. Well, it is still in the operating system, but it's hidden behind closed doors. And if you're using the Magic V2 for work purposes, that is really useful. Put simply, when it comes to performance, you're not going to feel shortchanged with this phone, and the same goes for the battery life. I got 2 days out of this thing regularly, and this brings me on to my big conclusion. A fantastic camera system with a very deep feature set, super performance, a fantastic operating system which has some genuinely useful features, a truly breakthrough foldable design, they can absolutely claim that, and 2 of the best displays on the market. I can confidently say that this is the best foldable smartphone I have ever used. And if you're on the fence about this category, but you're edging towards buying one and you have the budget, most importantly, this could be the one that sways you. However, if your budget is much further south, don't worry because Honor has you covered there as well. Keep watching for a link to my full review of the Magic 6 Lite.